Welcome to Primordial Sound Meditation. My name is Shannon Allen, and I am a Chopra certified meditation teacher. This is Class 1, Introduction to Primordial Sound Meditation. Let's get started. So, let's talk about how I got started with meditation. My background is in nursing, and I'm also a family nurse practitioner. In my role as a primary care provider, a 1,500 patient panel in a federally qualified health center, in the past eight to 8.5 years, I really noticed that there is a trend of patients cycling through. They kept going to their referrals to see specialists and whatnot, but they just kept returning to me saying, Shannon, I still don't feel good. This is after multiple specialty referrals, seeing multiple specialists and trying different medications. Most of my patients that kept returning were chronic pain patients and anxiety patients. So, it was kind of like up to me, like, what am I supposed to do? I've sent them out to the specialists. I'm a generalist, I'm a referologist. So my toolbox was completely empty, and I'm thinking, what can I do for these people? So that's where my journey really started 3 years ago. And I was like, really, I went into dabbled into functional medicine and then functional nutrition. And then I came across meditation. So for me, I had an opportunity to try some meditation. I was on leave in July of 2023, and I thought, you know what, this would be a great time to really learn how to meditate. Truly, I've never really studied it, but I was making the recommendation because we all know that chronic stress, chronic anxiety leads to physical manifestation of illnesses, pain, and decreased mobility. It really happens that way. And I've seen that trend over and over again throughout my lifetime, throughout my career. So, how can we mitigate this? And I thought, yeah, meditation. So, I would say to my patients, okay, well, why don't you try meditation? There's free apps out there. Go ahead and give that a try. But it's rather than just saying, "Hey, go get a free app," it'd be kind of nice to be able to understand it and teach it, perhaps in the little time that we have in a primary care visit. So I tried it out. To my surprise, the meditation that I actually tried, which was a 21-day challenge on Spotify by Deepak Chopra, it totally changed my life. I mean, everything, just my perception of my challenges and struggles during the day totally changed. My days went by smoother. I started meditating on my lunch breaks. I could have a terrible morning. I go on my lunch break, meditate in my car. And literally, my coworkers would look at me, even my manager, who I really didn't get along with. She would see me floating in after lunch. She's like, "Ooh," she literally said this, "I want some of that." I guess I had this aura like, yeah, everything's great. So that is the beauty of meditation. And it's just such an honor and privilege to be able to share this practice with you. Meditation has really grounded me spiritually. Even people around me at home, they notice a difference. I had one lady, a coworker, once again, that says, "Yeah, I'm seeing a change in your aura, and I'm just generally a happier person." So I'm really excited to share this practice with you so you can get started and be on your wellness journey right now. So, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is whole person wellness. This is something that was ingrained in me in the nursing training program going back all the way to 2003. That's when I became a registered nurse back in 2003. So, actually, my training went back starting like in 2001. But anyway, so it's been a long time. It's been over 2 decades of nursing. So I've always embraced whole person wellness. So what that means is that there are all these pillars, as you can see in this slide, that contribute to wellness. So if you notice, nutrition and exercise is a small piece of the pie. So oftentimes we're so focused on nutrition and exercise. Like all the problems are going to go away if we eat well and we exercise every day. Well, that's not true. We really need to embrace the social side of our wellness, which is getting engaged in some kind of community. That's actually important for our health. Spirituality is important, mental and emotional balance and well being, adequate sleep, good quality of sleep and rest, and stress management. Now, as a physician, as a family nurse practitioner, I'm thinking, okay, so do I need to be an expert in each one of these areas to help my peoples? That seems like a huge task. So take a look at nutrition. Okay, so I'm going to go get certified as a nutritionist. I'm going to be a social worker. I'm going to become a minister. I'm going to become a mental health specialist. And then I'm going to study sleep and management and become a health coach, family therapist. That's a lot. That's a lot of education, a lot of time, and a lot of money. So, how am I going to bring all this together for my patients? That's where I had the disconnect with modern medicine because we really just addressed the symptoms, right? 80% of the prescriptions that we actually write are for symptom management. Only 20% of the pharmaceuticals are for the cure of disease. So don't get me wrong, I believe in pharmaceuticals for acute condition, critical conditions, life-threatening conditions. Yes, please. Yes, I will accept that too. I will willingly take medication if it is acute or critical. Yes, absolutely. But when it comes to wellness, to keep you well and prevent diseases, as far as disease prevention, I like to look at the drugless methods. And this is what whole person wellness is all about. So, as a meditation instructor, as I was studying and I was teaching meditation, I noticed that it does actually check off each one of these boxes. Um, so actually, this kind of brings me to spinal flow as well. I'm also a certified spinal flow practitioner. And with meditation and spinal flow, we're able to find that medium and bring those two practices together. Meditation alone, if you can practice it and bring it into your routine every day, it works beautifully. But there are some people who are not actually meditating when they think they're meditating. And that's where spinal flow comes in. Spinal flow is a very, very gentle, non-invasive, holistic modality where a client lies down on the table, actually face down, and actually, I use just very gentle touch on access points in the sacrum and cranium mainly, and it actually helps the client to really experience that meditative state. And in conjunction, I teach meditation so that my clients can learn and experience that meditative state and bring meditation as a routine hygiene of the mind every single day to increase energy, increase creativity, and productivity. So now we're looking at the overview of taking your next step toward a lifetime of fulfillment. So this is class 1 out of 4, Introduction to Primordial Sun Meditation. After watching this class, if you decide, hey, I want to move forward and I want to receive my personal mantra, Your personal mantra introduction is considered class 2, and in that that can be done virtually or in person. And it's actually a ceremony where you receive your personal mantra in person, and I will teach you how to use it. So, how ancient is primordial sound meditation? So, the oldest documentation or evidence of meditation is depicted on a wall art in India around 5,000 to I'm sorry, 5,000 to 3,500 BC. So we're talking close to 7,500 years ago. That's crazy. So there's actual wall art of people meditating in India. That just blew my mind when I learned about that. So the Vedas is an old written record of meditation, and it dates back about 1500 BC. And they were written in Sanskrit, and it was found in India. So basically, Deepak Chopra actually brought this primordial sound meditation back into the modern world. He is actually a endocrinologist, a doctor out of San Diego, and, similar to other physicians and nurse practitioners like myself, he found that there was something missing in modern medicine. And this is what was really helping his patient clientele, is bringing back primordial sound meditation. So in conjunction with he actually teamed up with Dr. David Simon. Unfortunately, he is not with us anymore. But together, they actually put together a program, revived primordial sound meditation, systematized it so that they could train other meditation instructors to do the same. So we can spread this modality to everyone and anyone in the world. A little bit about Dr. David Simon that really struck me as I was studying meditation is about his experience with a middle school teacher. So that was really a turning point for him. That this wonderful middle school teacher was teaching his students about the difference in the mindset and the goals of the Western world versus the Eastern world. In the Western world, we are trained conventionally by our surroundings, that we've trained our minds to be competitive and to see how much information we can retain, and the person that can retain the most information is successful. And in the academic arena, we're always competing, and it seems like it's a never-ending cycle, and there isn't much focus on rest. Whereas the Eastern philosophy is to see who can quiet their mind, who can actually quiet their mind the most. And to me, that was just fascinating. I myself grew up in Japan, and I have grew up in a bicultural environment. And, I have to say, I had the influence of growing up around a Buddhist temple. I've seen monks meditating. I was inspired by even animation. There was animation called Ikkyu-san. It's actually a Buddhist monk that practices meditation, and so it's it's always been in the back of my mind. I never really practiced meditation, although I have attended some chants where I was expected to be still and mindful, but it wasn't really taught to me. I actually enjoyed chanting with my friends. I'd go to their house and follow along and learn some chants, and that was exciting to me. So I did have a little bit of influence growing up, but never really practiced it. And so learning this practice through the Chopra program was very exciting. And at this age, I'm 54 years old. I'm like, oh, finally, I'm meditating. And it's just so nice. It's just a full circle moment for me. So, meditation is known as an antidote to stress. So, stress results from perceiving obstacles to the fulfillment of our needs and desires. Um, the body responds aggressively to these perceived obstacles. So, it's not actually, it can just be a thought, and your body reacts as if there's a tiger in the room. It's just crazy. And it's called the fight, flight, freeze response. I'm sure you're familiar with it. So we have the diagram here of the fight, flight, freeze response. So just to keep in mind, stress can be beneficial as well. So eustress is what we call it. When we experience minor stress, which motivates us and invigorates us to do something challenging but not overwhelming, that's eustress, and that's actually healthy. And also, we're hardwired to, kind of have an idea if there's danger near us, and we need the stressors to say, hey, you need to get out of the way, for safety reasons. Yeah, if it's a real danger to physical danger to you, we need that. But the problem is there's an overreaction of our body to protect ourselves even when it's just a thought in our mind. And that's where we get into trouble. This is a very primitive stress response that we have inherited over the years. Our ancestors survived because of this mechanism, but in our world today, it may not be useful and it can be harmful if we're not able to control it better. So, an example of what kind of reaction your body has to stress, like I said, whether it's emotional or physical, your heart beats faster. So your blood is pumping more quickly. Your blood pressure rises. You consume more energy and expel more carbon dioxide. Perspiration increases. So you're getting ready for that fight or flight. Adrenal glands pumps out adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol. The pancreas releases more glucagon, that's sugar, and less insulin. So raising the blood sugar, getting ready for extra energy stores. It shunts blood from your digestive organs to your muscles, so you're not digesting very well. Digestion happens in rest, not when you're in fight or flight or in survival mode. You release fewer rejuvenating hormones, DHEA, growth hormones. The immune system becomes suppressed and your platelets become stickier. This is a key point, too. You hear about people at younger ages experiencing stroke these days. I mean, under 50, like at 46. It's crazy. It's because of our lifestyle, just a very unhealthy lifestyle that's coined as normal, or if that's what's happening around you, you feel like it's normal. So you go along with it, and then boom. Yeah. So chronic stress, chronic anxiety, that is not normal. And we need to recognize it and we need to find a way to settle our mind and find a routine to relax our body so that we're not in chronic stress and get away from chronic anxiety. And it takes practice. So I'm glad you're here. So, like I said earlier, what I alluded to, the seeds of illness. So, imagine your stress is actually very chronic, your anxiety is very chronic, and there's just no rest, or you just don't know how to rest. And this is the life, and this is, accepted way to live for some reason based on your environment, or you just need help. You need help to learn how to rest your mind, even if it's for 5 minutes. What we say in meditation is no matter how long your meditation session is, even if it's for 1 minute, or even if it's just to say, that's it. That could be enough every single day. Just that will dramatically help your health and actually improve your lifestyle and everything. It's pretty amazing. So let's talk about the seeds of illness. I'm getting off track here a little bit, but so with chronic, so we're talking about non-life threatening situations can weaken our health, right? So imagine this is chronic and you have the perception that this is normal and you need to be successful and competitive and live this way. If you don't know any other way to live, how would you know? So the problem is the physical manifestations of these stresses will come through, and the changes in physiology, which is chronic, in the increase in blood pressure, heart stress can actually lead to chronic heart disease. Your increased stress hormones can lead to anxiety, insomnia, addictions, increased blood sugar, diabetes, and obesity, decreased circulation, digestive tract, digestive disturbances, decreased growth and sex hormones, premature aging, decreased immunity leads to infections and cancer, increased sticky platelets leads to heart attacks and strokes. Pretty scary stuff. So oftentimes we're not able to change what's externally of our body, right? So what's happening in the outer world, what's happening around you. Instead of changing what's happening around you, in meditation, we go within. We're able to go within so that we can change the mindset, even if everything around you is still the same. That is the beauty of meditation. So, this slide is on restful awareness. So, meditation induces a state of deep rest in which the body heals itself by eliminating stress, fatigue, and toxins. So there is a detox effect when you meditate. So if you're constantly in survival mode, your body is not able to heal from within. Your body is not able to digest the foods properly to give you the proper nutrition that you need. You'll feel often tired, with if when you're in survival mode, if your adrenaline can only pump so much cortisol and adrenaline, it's just, hmm, it's just yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you just get so exhausted, you just have to like, that's it, I'm done, right? We don't want to get there. You want to go ahead and reset the body, get a routine going every day so that you can rest, you can get the proper nutrition, and you can feel energized. You can actually absorb the nutrition. And then you can continue with your creativity and productivity and feel well. That is so important. So, restful awareness is prompting the brain to release neurotransmitters linked to happiness. Restful awareness happens when you meditate while you're standing, sitting, not so much lying down. It is possible to meditate while you're lying down, but oftentimes your body associates that to sleep. Well, that's different. But meditating in a comfortable position, whatever that is for you, is enough to make these changes so that you can continue to live a happy, healthy life. So, in the state of restful awareness, your heart rate actually slows down. Your blood pressure normalizes. You consume less oxygen. You perspire less. Adrenal glands produce less adrenaline and cortisol. You produce more rejuvenating hormones. Your immune function improves. Your breathing slows down. And your platelet function normalizes. Isn't that nice? So here's a diagram just kind of depicting the difference war versus peace. Okay, fight, flight, or freeze. We're talking like, okay, we're in a war zone. And then in peace, we're more restful, right? So this is comparing what your heart does, your blood pressure, it affects your respiration, perspiration, your stress hormones, Anti-aging hormones. Yes, we want that to go up, and that's in restful awareness. We want to increase those anti-aging hormones. And then definitely the platelets. Yeah, we want the stickiness to go down. You really don't want to have a stroke anytime in your life. No way. So, this is about the software of the soul. So, most of us make decisions based on habit and conditioning, whether we know it or not. This is the cycle that feels comfortable, whether it's healthy for you or not. You just keep going in the circle. So good, it's about this is about the cycle that limits you to repeating old patterns over and over again. A good analogy is if you're driving a car in a dirt road and you're driving in a circle, and then you eventually it forms a rut in the soil, and then you can actually you're on autopilot and the car just keeps going in that circle. That's what we're talking about here. So, within the software of the soul, we have action, which is karma, memory, samskara, and desire, vasana. So, as you can see, as an example, you have a desire to maybe go on a vacation. So, you go on that vacation and you have a great time. So that's karma. And you're like, yeah, this is great. I'm finally rested, and I'm ready to tackle the world. And then you come home, and then you go back to your old conditioned life. And then you start thinking about that vacation going. It's like, oh man, I really want to go back to that island or wherever you were at because it felt good. So that's memory, samskara. And from that memory, evolves your desire again. So then you call, the travel agent to schedule your next vacation. So that's kind of how the software of the soul works. So imagine if you could actually feel that restfulness without having to take that vacation, every 6 months or a year. Imagine being able to rest and feel that restfulness at home every single day, even if it's for a minute or 5 minutes. You don't have to wait to go on that vacation to find that restful state by learning the meditation practice. So, beyond escaping the cycle of action, memory, and desire through meditation, developing the skill of witnessing awareness may be helpful. So you can reprogram your soul's software by becoming consciously aware of the choices you make. To develop witnessing awareness, there are 4 steps. 1, witness the choices you make. Bring the decision-making process from the unconsciousness realm into the consciousness realm. Hard to say. Unconscious to conscious. So instead of the reflex effect. You don't just like deflect every time you have to make a choice. Kind of stand back and give yourself a moment to think about it. Give yourself some time. And that's the next step is to stop and reflect. So that's just kind of like bringing yourself out instead of being within the realm of decision making. Kind of step back and become a third person as if you're watching a movie from the outside and say, wait a minute, this is going on. Here are the different people, and this is what's going on. Just look at it from the outside. So, in the stop and reflect step, you think about the questions to ask yourself is what are the consequences? Will this choice bring happiness and fulfillment to me? Will it bring happiness and fulfillment to others it affects? Then tune into your inner wisdom. Pay attention to the sensations in your body. Let the feelings of comfort or discomfort guide you. Most people receive the message of comfort or discomfort in around the heart. Others receive it in the solar plexus or the gut. So think about IBS, the mind and body is connected. And with IBS, pretty much, all the physical exams and imaging studies, pretty much all of that came back negative. It's a diagnosis of exclusion. That's the gut. That's the gut telling you there's something going on that you're uncomfortable with. That's your solar plexus. And that's why we call it the gut feeling, right? So, step four, place your attention to your heart or your solar plexus, your gut, your heart, and really pay attention to those sensations. It's like, how do I feel about these choices? And if your body sends a feeling of comfort or eagerness, then go ahead with the decision. Perfect. But if it sends a signal of physical or emotional distress, carefully consider the outcome or consequences of your choice. And over time, with regular meditation practice, we can begin to spontaneously make the choices that is right for us, rewriting the software of the soul. That's how it works. So now we're talking about the basics of meditation. The human mind can be a very chaotic place where thoughts move constantly in and out. As a matter of fact, there are 40 to 60,000 thoughts that goes through a human mind every day, every 24 hours. It's crazy. That's a lot of thoughts. So in a racing mind, those thoughts are just going constantly one after another. The thing with meditation is that we want the speed of the thought to slow down. And believe it or not, there is a tiny little gap in between each one of those thoughts, even in a racing mind. The idea with meditation is that we want to slow down those thoughts enough to where the gap between thoughts, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We want to grow that gap. That is where we find in the gap, not in the thoughts, in the gap. That's where we find the field of infinite possibilities. That is the magic of meditation. So, in primordial sound meditation, we're moving our awareness from the noisy activity of the mind to quieter levels of thinking until eventually we slip beyond thought altogether. So, once again, that is the area we call the gap, the silent space between thoughts. We also call it the field of infinite possibilities because between one thought and the next is a potential for any other thought. In the gap, we also find the silence of the spirit, and we bump into our true selves. So remember this, you are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts. So the gap between thoughts is the only place your true self can be found. Your essential nature, your soul, is a silent field of infinite possibilities. Now, experiencing the gap or the field of silence and infinite possibilities through meditation keeps you rooted in the calm. When you come out of meditation, you bring a little of this silence and possibility into your daily life. This means that even amid chaos, confusion, and change, you're rooted in silence, stability, and calm. So, life is a multidimensional. Um, Life is multidimensional. That's what I was going to say. But anyway, so this is a concept developed by Adi Shankara, the 8th century yogic sage. And there are three primary layers of life. There's the physical, subtle, and causal. Although we tend to think of these levels' existence as separate, they are actually consciousness in different disguises. So when we are able to freely access these different layers, we achieve balance and integrations. And just getting to know these different dimensions just gives us a new perspective in life. So, primordial sound meditation essentially traverses the full range of experience from the manifest to the unmanifest. And we'll talk about that some more. So, here's a diagram of the three basic components of life according to the ancient Vedic tradition. And this is from which where this is where the primordial sound meditation is derived from. So the physical body is made of matter and energy. And we often perceive the environment as something out there, outside of our body, separate from ourselves. But it really is part of who we are. Everything we do affects the environment. The nourishment that we get comes from the environment. The air that we breathe comes from the environment. And everything that happens in the environment affects us. So when we start a car, something changes in the environment. When the weather shifts, it affects how we feel. We can think of the environment as our extended body. So closer to home, we have a personal body, and that is what we're very familiar with. This is what we walk around in, we feed it, clothe it, and so on. And it too is made of matter and energy, primarily from the food we ingest. The subtle body is comprised of the mind, intellect, and ego. The mind is where we experience thoughts, feelings, emotions, and desires. The intellect is where we process information, have ideas, explore new concepts, etc. The ego is who we think we are, the stories, the conditioning from which we surround ourselves. And if you ask someone who they are, they might share info like their name, job, nationality, and so on. But none of these things are who they truly are. They are simply labels they give themselves. So who we really are is much deeper. We find ourselves um, in the true self. So we find our true self in the causal body, so named because it causes everything to happen. And the causal body doesn't seem connected. Like our mind and body is definitely connected, but the causal body is just kind of floating up here. And sometimes it's hard to make that connection because we cannot actually see it. We can't actually hear what's happening in the causal body, like literally, but it's there. And it is sending messages to us every day. And it takes really practice to hone into that causal body. So, this is where we find who we really are. We find our true self in the causal body. Here we find the individual soul, the collective soul, and the ultimately universal consciousness. So, breaking it down a little bit more, the individual soul carries the seeds of memories and desires from one lifetime to the next. It has a much longer shelf life than the physical body. The collective soul gives us access to the potential and creative power of the collective human psyche. Universal consciousness brings us to the highest state of all knowing oneness. So, separation between people and a lack of awareness around our interconnectedness is an enormous cause of conflict in today's world. Imagine if your hands decided they didn't like each other and started fighting. It doesn't make sense. That would be ridiculous, right? Your hands have their own individuality, though, but they are part of our wholeness. So, similarly, we have our own individuality, but through meditation, we realize our connection with the whole of humanity. Once we realize that at our deepest level, we are all connected and any need for anger and hostility will cease to exist, and a peaceful, harmonious world will emerge. Primordial sound meditation guides us between the inner world and the outer world, from our individual identity to our universal identity. And as we make this journey back and forth, we begin to realize that the layers of life are simply universal consciousness, displaying itself in different disguises. And then the separation now dissolves. So, what is primordial sounds? So, primordial sounds is basically everything in creation is made of vibration. There's a certain frequency to everything, even inanimate objects, even a rock has a frequency. So, primordial sounds are the vibrations of the universe, recognized by ancient sages and recorded in relation to the position of the moon. Your primordial sound meditation mantra has the effect of drawing your awareness back to the gap. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about the origins of primordial sound meditation. Although the name is new by yogic standards, primordial sound meditation originates in India's ancient Vedic tradition, based on the teachings of 8th century sage Adi Shankara. This meditation technique has been tried and tested for thousands of years. This practice is based on primordial sounds, nature's most basic sounds or vibrations. There are 108 primordial sound meditation mantras derived from the study of ancient sages who recorded the vibrations of the universe in relation to the position of the moon. But it wasn't until the late 20th century that this technique was revived, systematized, and made accessible to everyday people. In the early 1990s, Dr. Deepak Chopra and Dr. David Simon established the Chopra Center, now Chopra, in San Diego, California. Meditation has been effective in their own lives for more than 20 years, and they now wish to share it with others. Conferring with Vedic scholars in the US and India and joined by Roger Gabriel, they reintroduced this ancient technique to the world. In my training, I had the privilege to be in the presence of Roger Gabriel and my virtual training sessions for meditation teacher training. So I feel very blessed and grateful for that. And a wonderful experience to be in his presence. Um, and then the other thing about the primordial sound meditation practice is that Deepak hopes that eventually 1 billion people will be engaged in meditation or other awareness expanding techniques. So, this critical mass of consciousness will result in a positive paradigm shifting change worldwide and the advent of world peace. Chopra has taught primordial sound meditation to more than 100,000 people and trained thousands of teachers worldwide, moving us closer to that 1 billion figure. And together, we are raising the frequency of the entire world. And now, you're part of that movement. So it's an honor for me to begin teaching you primordial sound meditation. Everything in creation is made of sound or vibration, even the universe itself. Thousands of years ago, The ancient sages recognized that the sound of the universe changed periodically throughout the lunar cycle. They documented 108 vibrations of the universe, each of which relates to the position of the moon. These are the primordial sounds. Knowing the time, date, and location of a person's birth, we can use Vedic mathematics to calculate the moon's position at that very moment. This allows us to identify the corresponding sound of the universe, which becomes a part of their primordial sound meditation mantra. Your personal mantra incorporates the vibration of the universe was making at the time and place of your birth. This was the moment your awareness emerged from the non-local domain of pure potentiality into a localized manifest world. In practicing primordial sound meditation, the vibration that took you from the non-local domain to the local domain can also take you back. And this allows you to journey from activity to silence into an experience of pure awareness. So the word mantra has two parts. Man, the root of Sanskrit word for mind, and tra, the root of Sanskrit word for instrument. So mind, instrument. The mantra is an instrument of the mind, a powerful sound or vibration that can be used to enter a deep state of meditation. Mantras exist in many cultures and traditions. They serve a variety of purposes. They can provide a means of heightened mental clarity, emotional healing, cultural connection, and personal affirmation. In primordial sound meditation, the mantra serves as a vehicle of sound to take us from activity into silence. As we repeat the mantra, it becomes increasingly abstract and indistinct. We experience expanded levels of awareness until we're finally led into the field of pure consciousness, from which the vibration arose. Associating a sound with meaning perpetuates mental activity. The primordial sound meditation mantras have no limited or conventional meaning. They're used solely for their sound or vibration. So there's no meaning attached, it's just a sound. When we use them in meditation, there's nothing to hold our attention at the level of activity. We can then slip beyond that activity into the gap between our thoughts. Primordial sound meditation mantras are repeated silently, soothing the nervous system and moving our awareness inward. Over time, this meditation technique expands our awareness and positively empowers all our actions every single day. It's best to keep your personal mantra private in the silence of your consciousness. Refrain from speaking it aloud or otherwise sharing it with anyone. So today, I introduced primordial sound meditation. We discussed the impacts of stress on the mind-body system and how meditation acts as an antidote to stress. We learned about the software of the soul and how meditation helps us to develop witnessing awareness, leading to make better choices. We also examined Adi Shankara's model of the layers of life, the multidimensionality of our being. Speaking of causality, that causal body that just sits above us and we know it's kind of around us. Have you ever had an experience where you just know you can't see it, you can't really convince anybody else? It's kind of weird to talk about. Have you ever had those experiences? That is our causal body really speaking to us. It's that instinct. Yeah. So we discussed the ancient origins of primordial sound meditation and the role of mantras as a vehicle to connect us to our universal nature of stillness and silence, and really embarrassing, really embracing that stillness, because that's where we're able to reset and access the field of infinite possibilities. So, should you decide to continue, in our next class, you'll receive your personal primordial sound mantra, and I'll share how to use it. I will teach you how to use it. This can be virtually or in person. And this is a very special time, more of a ceremony than a typical class. So, ceremonies have been used for thousands of years to celebrate important milestones. I'll present your mantra by employing a traditional teaching ritual that honors those who have preserved this meditation technique throughout the ages. I will be honored to share these teachings with you. So, for this appointment, prepare to arrive a few minutes early and allow for about an hour so you won't feel rushed. And it's best to come well rested. If you're hungry, eat something light beforehand, but avoid having a heavy meal right before class. You may bring a piece of fruit and a flower as an offering to the lineage of teachers and the teachings. After receiving your mantra, they will be blessed with the essence of the ceremony. So, receiving a mantra in this manner is an occasion that you'll remember for years to come. Consider doing something to make the day extra memorable. For example, you might wear something special, plan a nice meal, take a walk in nature, or spend the day in solitude, savoring the silence of meditation. So if you decide this is it, contact me personally. I will need your date of birth, time of birth, and place of birth. If you don't know the time of birth, there is a generic time we can use, so don't worry about that. And I look forward to seeing you again. Bye.